Hey, everybody, welcome back to Capitalist Culture. Today's guest is Steve Blair, Chief People Officer at Fulcrum Collective. And after nearly 3 decades, he's helped companies like P&G, Ghirardelli, and Harvest Group build purpose-driven cultures that attract talent and drive performance. Steve believes culture isn't a side function, it's the foundation of every great company. Steve, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you.
Thanks, Kip. Super excited to be here. This is fun.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, maybe we'll kind of go back to the origin, kind of your roots
Sure.
as a culture builder.
Yeah.
Like you've built cultures inside some of the world's most iconic brands. As we were talking before we even got on here, some of it was in a
Yeah.
hobby before it was a full time,
Yeah.
really the calling. But what
Yeah.
first drew you into people and cultural
Yeah.
leadership?
No, it's a great question. I started. I was blessed to start my career at Procter Gamble, so one of the biggest of the big companies. Um, Unbelievable culture in its own right, even back in the mid '90s when I joined. But for the first 17 or 18 years of my career, I was in that organization, getting to experience what it's like to work for and watch leaders that live out values and uphold the basic tenets of a culture. Although back then I had no idea what it was called. I didn't know what I was watching, but I was watching. I was learning both how I wanted to lead and how I didn't want to lead, all in the same system. But P&G does a great job of giving people encouragement to have internal interests in addition to your job.
Mm.
And so, the majority of my 17 years, I was responsible for, like, for example, the diaper business at Walmart. So I'm here in Northwest Arkansas. And so I sold the diapers to Walmart and Sam's Club as a
Okay.
job for, a number of those years. But I was always the first to volunteer to facilitate new hire onboarding. I was always the first to volunteer to go back to campus and interview. We were 100% promote from within company back then.
Okay.
And so every hire came off of campus. Like
Huh.
that's the only way new hires came into the sales organization, at least. And so much so that for 8 of those 17 years, I had an official role as the leader of campus recruiting for North America. And that was a hobby. That was not my job
Huh.
within P&G. That was my hobby in addition to selling, you know, almost $1 billion worth of diapers to Walmart. And so that gave me the taste of what it feels like to work with people and culture, even though I didn't know it was culture at the time, a focus on those things. And it honestly, it took me another 7 years of other jobs. I left P&G, went to Ghirardelli Chocolate and stood up their national accounts team, hired 7 of 9 roles while I was there, opened up 3 offices for them, which I came to know is a big part of my joy at work is physical workspace and helping
Okay.
companies display their values and their culture through the place
Mm.
where people call work. But it wasn't until 2015 that I had the opportunity to make my hobby my vocation. And honestly, it wasn't until I didn't have the courage until 2015 to say, I'm going to go from being a commercial sales leader in the organization to being what essentially was an HR executive. Just to be honest, Kip, I did not grow up in my first 25 years of work with many HR examples that I wanted to emulate.
I believe it.
Um, so then I had the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to go do it. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to do it the way that I think it could be done and should be done. And so that's what happened when I went to Harvest Group in 2015. And I would say, the second half of my career started, even though it's only been 10 years of the 30, um, because it feels like it's been a whole half of my career, because it feels like it's where I should have been all along, is in this space of helping leaders and founders build cultures of work that people want to work in and top talent wants to come and stay.
Yeah.
So that's a real long-winded way of how I got into the world of people and culture, but it is definitely where I'm supposed to be.
That's amazing. How about talk a little bit about Harvest Group and like
Yeah,
So
I had the
what did you do there,
opportunity.
and what did you do? Yeah, what have you done
Yeah,
there?
great question. So the company was is 19 years old. So when they called me in 2015, they were in year 7 or 8, I believe, and they had 25 people in one office here in Northwest Arkansas, and they had a vision. The three founders had a vision to get to 50. They thought that was how big they had their sights set back then. And like not unlike most companies back then, they made the choice to bring in a full-time senior leader focused on people and culture because
Okay.
they knew it was that important. And I would say they're an example of an organization that built the literal company from day one with values and culture forefront, and then let that attract the top talent, and then they let that top talent figure out what the business model would
Mm.
ultimately, become and evolve greatly over the years. But I got to come in. I was number 26 at the time, and again, their big vision was to get to 50. And when I left 7 years later, they were somewhere between 275 and 300.
Okay.
And we had gone from one office in Arkansas to 5 offices around the world with one in another country. And the craziest thing of all of that, Kip, and what I'm most proud of is they had an extremely like a market setting culture when they had 25 people. Like they were an example then of the kind of culture that you would want to come work for. And uh, my goal and what we achieved was when I left, it was a stronger culture objectively using the data that us HR nerds use to measure, culture and engagement. It was a stronger culture um, with 225 more people and four more locations in two countries. And and that's where I really figured out, wow, there's a playbook here. There's some things organizations can do, and core tenets that they can put into practice that can not only repair, broken cultures, but can help healthy cultures scale quickly, which is what I got to do with Harvest. And it was a to this day most rewarding career chapter so far. I'm indebted to them for always, but it really opened my eyes to the power of clarity and commitment around the impact that a culture can have on not only the people, the business model, but clients and customers. Like they consistently get comments from clients that come and visit. Like, what is it about this place? Like it's different here, and that's awesome. That's if I'm top talent in any of the marketplaces that we operate in, I want to work at that company.
Yes. How about any thoughts on like part of that? What are some of those core tenets or out of the playbook
Yeah.
that
Yeah, I would say first and foremost, they got really clear on their values, on and the values they wanted to operate the company with, and they did that from day one at the dining room table in one of the founders' homes before they even had an employee or a business. They sat down and crafted out the values that they wanted the organization to operate in because it was an organization they wanted to work in, and they knew that that would attract the people that they wanted to work with, the top
uh-huh.
talent they wanted to work with. And it's been 3 years since I left Harvest, and so I can't speak to the current exact wording of the values, but I know that when I left, um, the five values were the same five values, and one word or two words were added to the description of the values, and that's it.
Okay.
And those two words were with humility. We added the words with humility to our value of excellence, um, be, because we kind of felt ourselves getting a little too proud of the excellence that we were working with.
Okay.
And so, but that's just a testament to you get the values right, and then you use them the way they're supposed to be used, which is the lens through which you see every decision the company makes, whether it's who to recruit, how to recruit, who to promote, how to compensate and reward people, which clients to say yes to and which clients to say no to. Um, when it's not a fit in the organization, you're using the lens of your values to make all of those decisions. And when you can do that, and you can do that consistently over time in private and public ways, it's that reinforcement over time that does that. So to answer your question, one of the first main pieces of the playbook is to get really clear on your values. And if you're an organization out there that's in that process right now or thinking about, man, maybe we need to revisit our values. I had a great coffee conversation with a young lady yesterday. Her organization had some operational values that they had determined, but they felt like they weren't necessarily translating to the team, to the organization. And so I helped her kind of think through how they might think differently about their values. But I think an organization's values should be authentic. So you shouldn't look at an organization's values and wonder where that company is. You should look at an organization's values and say, yeah, that's totally them. That those values are exactly who those people are. So one, your values should be authentic. Two, I think there should be an aspect of aspiration in your values. There should be an element of, we may not be all the way there on innovation or on compassion or whatever the value might be, but we aspire to be there, and that will give us the encouragement we need to be there and to do that. And then the third kind of value, or the third consideration that I love talking about, is your values have to be unique.
Mm.
They have to be. They don't all have to be unique. Picking values is a pretty tough exercise, although fun. You can find yourself picking all the same values everybody else does. And while those may be your genuine values, I think there's benefit to having uniqueness in how you think about your values. One example, a company I worked with between Harvest Group and Fulcrum Collective, they didn't necessarily call them values; they called them mantras, but they were, guiding thoughts and phrases that determine their business. And one of their mantras was, "Sometimes you need a Ferris wheel." And
Huh.
I don't know of another company on the planet
Right.
who has a value or a mantra of sometimes you need a Ferris wheel, but they're in a consumer engagement, consumer marketing, and branding agency that helps companies make their brand come to life with consumers through sampling experiences and events and things. And they're quite known for being pretty creative. And
Okay.
so they'll come to a client with an idea, or they'll come to a client with who it gave them like kind of a challenge, and they'll say, okay, we've got three options. We've got the easy, doable option that will absolutely get your goal accomplished. We've got another option, which is the option that we really are excited about. It's kind of dreaming a little bit. And then here's a crazy one, man. Here is a knock your socks off. You may not even have the budget for it. And one time a client made a comment about, well, shoot, all we're missing is a Ferris wheel.
Huh.
And uh, and sure enough, the Ferris wheel showed up at that event.
That's great.
And so she uses that mantra to communicate, no, we do the hard, impressive things here. We do the creative things here that most people don't even think are possible. And so anyway, that's a long way, man. I got off track there, but I think it's important that values are authentic and that they're aspirational to some degree and that they're unique. I think if you can have an ownable value, even if it's just one of your four values, is like there's not another company on the planet that has that value, man, that's ownable. Your teammates can totally latch on to that and make it personal for them as well. And so I would just encourage folks, man, that I will tell you, Harvest Group's value that felt unique. They had a few that were very, very common: integrity, excellence. But journey was one of their values, and it spoke to, they put a really high premium on growth, on individual growth, business growth, personal growth. And so this idea of journey and finding joy in the journey, of growth and development was a core piece of their values. And I don't know, I can't think of another organization that has the word journey as a value, but man, they made it their own for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's so good. We talk so much with our clients and like in training with our firm too, just like core values are the key. And like you hire by the core values, you fire, you promote, you recognize, you celebrate,
Compensate.
compensate, all of it, and make all your business decisions through that lens of core values. And it makes things much more clear. You still make tough decisions, but it's clear why you're making the decision.
I tell you what, it's pretty amazing how accelerated everything can be when you have clarity around your values and you have conviction to make decisions based on them.
Uh-huh.
A 3 hour debate can be settled in a
Yes.
minute
Yes.
because you say, "Hey, tell me how that decision is reinforcing our value of community in the marketplace." And if it isn't, then we're not going to do that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it just speeds up everything.
That's so good. How about I mean, you've guided companies through massive growth, through acquisitions, transformation. What's been one of the toughest cultural challenges that you've faced through that? And maybe
Yeah.
what did it teach you about leadership?
Yeah. Here, man, I don't know if this is the toughest, but it's definitely one that I think a lot about. And so that tells me it shaped me a little bit if I'm constantly thinking about it. But, when we expanded that company into other markets, um, we thought it'd be pretty easy to take the award-winning culture that works in Northwest Arkansas, in the CPG business in Northwest Arkansas, and just drop it into another market in the CPG marketplace,
Uh-huh.
and it will attract the same top talent and it will work. And we learned that when we go into another market, that's not Northwest Arkansas, there was some translating to do. That there was some heavy lifting of, hey, this isn't necessarily resonating the same way than it did in Northwest Arkansas, or there's a healthy skepticism that it's even possible, or whatever. And so that was an eye-opening experience because my initial plan was just lift it up and drop it back down and hit the ground running. And
Uh-huh.
while the values, of course, are the values, and nothing changed about that, but the leader that we recruited to hire it took us a long time to find the right leader. And when we finally found her, she was clearly the right leader. But she was aligned in her own unique way with our values and our culture in Northwest Arkansas, but she was authentic, and it was
Mhm.
authentic to that market, and she was able to attract the talent that was authentic to that market. Um, so I learned that they're not just package them up and drop them in another geography and they're going to work. I mean, my goodness, we opened an office in Tunisia, North Africa. The cultures did not translate directly immediately. Now, over time, I think that our employees over there would tell you, man, we're so glad it translated because this is a great place to work and it's unique for our environment and for our marketplace. But the other thing I learned, Kip, and this is something I really work a lot with helping companies think through as they're growing quickly with their culture. I think there are three levels of culture in an organization, and especially one that is geographically either diverse or geographically dispersed. Um, I think there's a kind of a DNA level of the organization of the culture, and that's kind of where the mission, vision, values live. That's where the origin story lives. That's the
Yes.
DNA of the organization. That's the top level of the culture. But there are subcultures within that company, and maybe that's a team level culture, or maybe it's a geography, it's a market level culture. Those need to be unique. They need to manifest uniquely to that team or to that marketplace, but they've got to be directly tied to the top level culture, at the DNA level with values and culture. But there's a third level of culture that I think is the single most impactful connection point for any one employee, and that's their immediate manager.
Okay.
So if you think about three levels of culture, there's the organizational DNA level culture, there's a team or department or market that has a unique personality. So if this one's a DNA, this one's a kind of a personality of the culture. It kind of shows up uniquely in the different places. But man, where the rubber meets the road is your individual manager, and how they live out those values is your single most efficient way that an individual experiences the real culture of that organization. And so when I talk about that with organizations, the managers kind of get, wide-eyed and be like, "Oh man, that's a lot of weight." I'm like, "You're darn right it is."
Yes.
You are that person's constant reinforcement of the culture, and it's got to be an authentic aligned reinforcement. It can't be misaligned. Um,
Hmm.
so that concept of three levels is really it really resonates with folks. And I would say, your question was what's been difficult. It was difficult to convince myself that there were actually three levels, that there
Okay.
wasn't just the DNA level at the top and everybody else is going to, behave exactly the way that we did in the home office. That was a learning for sure, but it was an unlock. It was not just oh, that's hard. How do we deal with that? It was a no, this is a new unique concept that we need to jump all in on and embrace.
Yes.
And they have done that in such a remarkable way.
That's incredible. Yes. How about what happens when, culture starts to drift from the purpose, and maybe how can
Yeah.
leaders bring it back?
Yeah. Great question, Kip. I feel comfortable saying this. The organization that I was brought into 2 years ago is an organization that is about 30 years old. And for about 20 of those 30 years, they were one of the strongest cultures in our local marketplace. In fact, I told you Harvest is about 20 years old. This company is 30 years old. Um, this company that I'm in now is the only company that I ever tried to recruit talent from, and I was 0%
Huh.
successful while I was at Harvest Group. And I got called in 2 years ago because the board of directors felt like they had lost that edge.
Okay.
Um, and it's a family-owned business, and lots of things have changed over the years. And there's a core group of people that have stuck it out and are here celebrating 25, 26, 27-year anniversaries. But there was a season where the culture just it gradually drifted a little bit away from the core, and it was starting to be felt. And so I was so honored to get the call to say, "Hey, we see what you've done elsewhere. Can you come help us, um, circle the wagons and get this back on track?" It's not like they were calling me and saying, "Oh no, we're 5 years in and now we're starting to worry about our culture and it's unhealthy." We know exactly what it feels like to have one of the most healthy cultures in the area, but we've just lost our edge. Can you come help us kind of get that back? And so that's answering your question of what can leaders do if they start feeling it drifting. Well, that's what I've done for the last 2 years, was run the plays that I think um, matter. And so first and foremost, I will tell you, we clarified our values. That was one of the biggest things I tackled from the beginning. It took me a year to roll them out. We just rolled them out about a year ago, but it was a full team effort. We got every employee engaged in that process. We started with the original values and then kind of worked our way out from there, making sure that they were authentic, aspirational, and unique. And and it worked. And I would say another part of the playbook that we did was just get really clear on um, how we're going to recruit, what profile of folks we're going to recruit, um, how we're going to compensate. I did a full comp and benefits, analysis and restructured a lot of things in the organization because we had become uncompetitive in a couple of areas.
Okay.
I tell you what, though, and this seems silly to admit because it's giving away the secrets, but there is one device or one tool that I have used everywhere I've been, but certainly the last two places that I have worked, that I believe has been the most effective tool at one organization keeping the culture healthy and sharp, and in this organization earning back the culture that we so desperately wanted back. And it's all a matter of transparency and vulnerability from leadership all the way down.
Okay.
And here's why I said it's so crazy. It's simple. Um, it's so simple that I've made a silly little acronym out of it, so I can have more fun talking about it because
Uh-huh.
it's not rocket science. But my an acronym is WALA, 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 like a magician at a kid's birthday party, like revealing the big bunny
Uh-huh.
rabbit out of the hat. Um, but no, the W in WALA is, as leaders, you have to authentically wonder how are we doing? Like you have to authentically wonder, how is that person doing right now in our culture, in our organization? How is that team feeling about the organization and where we're headed and the direction and all the things? So wonder is the first letter. And by the way, uh, you're not going to have a hard time following along and guessing what the next few letters are because it's that simple. But the first A is you ask them. You
Yeah.
ask them, how are you doing? You ask them, how are we doing as an organization? In my case, I have a simple two-question engagement survey that we do every single quarter.
Hmm.
And based on how you answer the first question, you get a follow-up question. And then the L, W-A, wonder, ask. The L, anybody got a guess? It's listen. When
Yes.
they tell you how they're doing, you listen to what they say. And part of that listening is telling them what they told you, acknowledging what they said. So, what we do every quarter after we do the engagement survey or the engagement check in, it's really not a survey, it's a check in. I read out the results at every quarterly town hall meeting of what they told us the previous quarter and what they're telling us this quarter. And then the last A is act. You do something with what you've learned through your listening by asking and wondering how people are doing. And this is where it gets just stupid, silly, easy. But at these quarterly town halls, I tell people this is exactly what you told us. This is the number you gave us in terms of employee net promoter score. Here's what the promoters told us was so great about working here. And here's what one thing is in the way of people having more confidence in recommending us as an employer. And then I always close with, here are the two or three things we're going to do differently based on what you've told us. And and then the next quarter, I kick off that part of the meeting by saying, here's what we told you last quarter. How'd we do on the
Uh-huh.
three things we told you we were going to do differently? And then we close out every town hall with a live crowdsourced Q&A in the room. So we
Huh.
use a technology called Pigeonhole where people can submit questions throughout the town hall meeting, and then you can vote up questions of other people if you don't want to ask your own question. And then the CEO and I lead the leadership team through every question that's asked in order of votes. Like we tackle them transparently. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. But it's that transparency and that vulnerability combined with the reliable process of wondering, asking, listening, and acting on it. Those two things jam together, which are not hard to do. Any organization in the world can do those things tomorrow if they want to and if they're willing to. But I believe it was that regular cadence of that transparency and that vulnerability. Every quarter, they knew they were going to be asked. They knew that we were going to listen. They knew that we were going to do something. We couldn't fix everything, but
Hmm.
we're going to do something with what you tell us. And it's that flywheel that has led to engagement scores that have never gone backwards. So at
Huh.
28 quarters in a row at Harvest Group, our employee net promoter score crept up every single quarter. Here we've done it 8 quarters in a row, and we had one high point that I knew was not sustainable, but that's because we moved into a new office.
Right.
And I knew
Yes.
that the power of place is
Yes.
really important in an organization. And we're a hybrid work strategy.
Okay.
So you work in the office a few days a week. You work wherever you do your best work the rest of the week.
Yeah.
But compared to what we had, anything would have moved our score higher. This particular office that we put lots of heart into designing from the ground up, we shot up well over 80 from an employee net promoter score, which is not sustainable.
Huh.
We're back down to 72 right now, but it's that regular drip of every quarter. I know they're going to care enough to ask me how I'm doing. I'm going to tell them, they're going to listen, and they're going to do something. And the next quarter, they're going to do it again. That is remarkably effective in not only keeping a healthy culture growing healthier, but it's really effective at getting at the root cause of how a culture may have drifted and quickly addressing those things, which is exactly what we've done here.
Voila. That's so good.
Voila!
That's so good. Yes.
And so easy. It's
Yes.
crazy.
Oh, how about
Yeah.
at Fulcrum Collective? I mean, you're leading people operations, but across a portfolio
Mhm.
of high performing companies. How do you keep consistent culture when you're scaling and you're
Yeah.
looking across different industries, different teams? Maybe talk a little about that.
Yeah, I would say, the one of the main tenets is that levels of culture concept again, because we have the Fulcrum DNA is consistent across the organizations that we have, but the individual operating units, the individual operating businesses, do have a bit of a personality, and we want them to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they all participate in the engagement check-ins. They all participate in all the things. But then as we get data that can be attributed to a particular business unit, I'll obviously share that data with where appropriate. Of course, it's an anonymous survey, so we can't I can't follow up with questions. I can't attribute it to a person, but I can if they mention, hey, I'm on the ranch to retail business, I can share that feedback with that leadership. But it really is that idea of there's a core muscle that runs through the organization that is that DNA level of the culture, and then there's room for personality in the different operating companies. Um, it's that simple. I think it's that simple.
Uh-huh.
It really is.
Yeah. And you've helped organizations grow fast without like losing their soul.
Yeah.
So what's the key to scaling culture without losing that authenticity or losing that soul?
Yeah. I think it's being able to name the soul. That's
Hmm.
right. So have the vocabulary you can use to talk about your values, to talk about decisions that were made through the lens of the values. I think a really key point, and this is any organization, but especially the ones that are scaling quickly and you're welcoming 10, 15, 20 teammates in a month to join the organization. Stories are incredibly powerful to
Yes.
keeping a culture alive and vibrant. And it's really funny. I was talking to somebody a week ago that joined Harvest in the last year, and they were telling me a story that I told every time we talked about our value of integrity. And here they were telling it back to me, and they'd only been with the company a month. And that story happened 16 years ago.
Wow.
Um, so that just tells you the power of authentic living out your values so that you have stories to tell.
Hmm.
Um, the other thing I would say that I think any fast-growing organization can do is talk about them all the time. Talk about your culture, talk about your values all the time. I encourage organizations to at least like if you have a regular cadence of team meetings, whether it's a weekly meeting, a monthly meeting, whatever it is, pick some level of cadence where the entire meeting is just teammates telling stories about other teammates living out the values. And so not only does that provide, meaningful recognition for folks that say, "Hey, you saw me live out our value of excellence when I handled that situation, and I appreciate you calling it out, to the organization." But it's also constant content. Like you're adding stories to the lore book of the organization every time you ask the company to tell stories. And what's fun is you start getting stories told by people that had been there 2 weeks,
Uh-huh.
or that had, and there was a story about their onboarding that reinforced a value in the organization. So I think it's the power of stories, it's the longevity of stories, and it's the frequent opportunities to tell them that matters, and on that idea of levels of culture. So at the organizational level, we would do that once a quarter, and we would tell stories about the culture with the whole company in the room. Well, the leader that opened up one of our first remote office wanted to do that same thing, but it felt kind of weird to tell stories once a quarter when there's five of you, right?
Uh-huh.
And not that there weren't stories, but it felt different. So he did something called the awesome jar.
Huh.
And throughout the year, if something awesome happened or you saw someone living out the values, you simply write a couple of words that would remind you what they were and put it on a post-it note, and it goes in the awesome jar. And then he would host a year-end dinner with the team, and they would pull out the awesome jar and tell the stories, retell the stories
Huh.
from the year. You can't do that with 275 employees, but you can do it
Sure.
with 20. You can do it with
Yes.
15. Um, so that's another example of that. Of again, it's that weaving together of the three levels of culture and the way that you can personalize the concept of storytelling around your values is one way that you can definitely keep a culture vibrant when it's growing fast and new people are coming in, every week or every month. The other thing that you could and should do if it's possible is having the leader of the organization part of the onboarding process and allow them to tell the origin story and tell a few stories about the culture.
Very
Um,
good.
Now, granted, that's an expensive hour-long meeting. You've got the CEO or the founder in the room, and you've got all your new hires tied up. But the ROI on that in terms of culture currency is very high. Um, so that's another thing I think that organizations should plan to do as they're growing fast is keep that connection with the senior leaders.
Yeah. And we're such I mean, humans are just such storytelling beings. Like that's how we learn, and that's how it just sticks in your brain. And as you said, the
Totally.
brand new person can remember the story from six or that they heard about 16 years ago. And
Yeah, for sure. It's
yeah.
crazy.
How
Hey,
about,
one other thing I will tell
yeah,
you about fast growing cultures. I think I've come to believe that there are also, just like there's three levels of culture, I think there's four or five roles within a culture in an organization.
hmm,
Okay, so stick with me for a second. There are creators of the culture. Those are individuals that were either on the founding team or they're really good culture fits and values aligned leaders that you bring in 5 years down the road, but they ooze the culture and they help you
yes,
create the culture. So there's creators of the culture. There's keepers of the culture. These are individuals that just embody the culture of the organization and they're not afraid to show it. And they're not afraid to talk about it. They're not afraid to be in front of the room. They're people that hold the leaders accountable when they see things drifting. These are the people that raise their hand and say, "Hey, I want to talk about something that happened." Those are your culture keepers. Um, I used to have just three, by the way, and I've added this fourth one, this next one.
yeah,
I believe there are culture curators,
hmm,
and those are people that look for ways to reinforce the culture.
okay,
They may be new to the organization, but they're aligned, they're all in. They're looking for ways that maybe the keepers of the culture just haven't noticed. They're maybe they're at the ground level. They're swirling around in the cubicles. So there are people that are curators of the culture that didn't necessarily create it and don't necessarily have the mantra or the mantle of keeping it healthy, but they can certainly curate it at the level of their organization. But then there's a fourth level, and those are culture consumers. And those are folks that certainly enjoy working in the organization. They get the benefits of being a part of that culture. Nothing wrong with being a culture consumer, but one of the red flags that I have seen as I've talked to organizations that may have had culture drift is your ratio of people starts falling down to that consumer of the culture breakdown. If 40% of your organization used to be culture keepers and only 10% were culture consumers, but all of a sudden you wake up and you've got half your organization are consuming the culture,
hmm,
but they're not actively curating it, they're not keeping it, they certainly didn't create it. That's a red flag. And so I encourage leaders to when they're doing their annual talent reviews, and we're going to do ours in mid-November, our annual review here coming up with our leadership group. One of the things I think they should do, and not only talking about a person's performance and a person's potential for future responsibility, is what role do they play in our culture? Were they a creator of the culture? Are they a keeper of the culture? Are they curating our culture, or are they just simply consuming the culture? Again, that's not wrong, that's not bad, but when those get out of ratio or get too bottom heavy, you've got to make note of that, and you've got to make sure you've got the right tools in place to get that mix back towards the top of that or towards the middle of that pyramid.
That's an excellent, excellent insight. That's very good.
It definitely works. And unfortunately, I know that because I've not realized it until it was too late a couple times
Yeah.
and had to scramble.
And you've kind of touched on this question just now, but like for CEOs, investors, listening, leaders of family offices or private equity or venture capital, how should they think about culture as, I mean, really a strategic asset as
Hmm.
opposed to just like a soft skill?
Yeah. No, it's a great question. I have come to believe that I should say, I could argue that culture um, is a currency in today's talent market.
Uh-huh.
And if you're not competitive from a base salary standpoint, and you're not at least competitive in your industry or in your market, if there's incentive comp or there's particular benefits you need to offer, like there's a base level of competitiveness there. And if you want to have access to top talent, those are non-negotiable. But the culture that you've created will that can attract the kind of leaders that you need to keep the culture strong, that's worth money. That's worth currency in the marketplace because you can get better talent. Um, I never advocate this. It doesn't mean you can pay less because that's an issue. I've actually had an organization I was working with that tried to convince me that because their culture was so strong, they could pay 15% less than the midpoint from a comp standpoint. And I was like, you might get away with that for a little bit, but like then you don't really believe you want the top talent because the top
Right.
talent is not going to take a 15% trade-off for for a healthy culture. Now, top talent is going to treat a healthy culture like just like base pay and incentive comp. That's a
Right.
given. Like if you don't
Yes.
have it, I'm not even going to interview there.
Yep.
Um, but I think culture is a currency, and so I'm about to jump on another one of my soapboxes, but um, I think another red flag in an organization is where does the people and culture focused leader report in the organization?
Yes. Very good.
If they report to the CFO, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but I would bet you money that the culture of that organization is a cost center,
Hmm.
not an investment pool.
Yep.
And I have seen it work remarkably better when the people and culture leader, regardless of the level of the individual, the most senior person charged with keeping the culture healthy, if they don't report to the CEO, I have seen time and time again, it is not the strategic priority that it is. Flip side, the organizations that have added a senior people and culture leader early in the life cycle of the company and have them report to the CEO,
Uh-huh.
hands down, I can tell you their culture will be healthier than any other competitors.
Absolutely.
Um, so I think where they report is a certainly a signal. Not only is it a signal of what's important, it's not going to work. Like it's going to be a bad decision in my personal opinion. Now, people can light me up in the comments all day long, and that's fine. Um, that HR or people in culture shouldn't report to the CFO. And by the way, two of my best friends are CFOs, so I get it.
Uh-huh.
But I just think I've seen it work too many times where when you make a commitment to having a senior leader at your leadership table whose sole job is to look after the health of the organization. And that, by the way, that person probably owns comp and benefits and owns payroll and owns performance management and owns talent acquisition,
Hmm.
but they're at the table, they report to the CEO. That's a signal to the organization that that is as important as the commercial operation inside the organization. That's important as the financial health of the organization. Um, Man, I don't remember what your original question was, Kip, so I'm so sorry, but
No,
I,
that's
I tend to get excited about
yeah.
some of these
It
things.
was really you answered it perfectly. Like how should CEOs, leaders think about culture as a strategic
Mm,
asset? Like,
yes.
and you answered it spot on.
The answer was that they should think about it as a
Right.
strategic asset.
Yes. How about
Um,
what's the flip? What's the biggest blind spot you see with leaders when it comes to building a strong people strategy? And it might be
hmm.
what you just described, but
Yeah, I mean, yes, if it's aligned in the wrong place in the organization, I think that's a signal that it's not a priority. Biggest mistake or biggest blind spot. Here's one. I think it's great if an organization has made the commitment to bring in that senior leader that's focused on protecting and strengthening the culture. But if the entire effort is relegated to that one person at the table,
Huh,
that's a blind spot.
sure.
Not only is it a blind spot, it's a missed opportunity for the uh, director of market research to not be a culture keeper at a minimum in the organization. And so, um, kudos to you if you've got the leader at the table that's focused on it. But if you're saying they're the only one responsible for the culture of the organization, you're missing a huge opportunity there. So that'd
Yeah.
be a blind spot I think that I would encourage people to watch out for.
Yeah.
The other blind spot I would tell you, and this one's kind of a cliche and kind of a silly thing now, but if you think culture is a kegerator in the kitchen
Yeah.
and catered lunch once a month, um, you're also missing it. That's also a blind spot. Um, I got nothing wrong with kegerators. They're a lot of fun, but if that's your strategy, you need to have a revisit to your culture strategy. Because that's not going to move the needle if all the other pieces of culture are out of line. You could have a whole tap wall in your office and it won't
Uh-huh.
matter.
Yeah. How about for you? You spent your career helping people find purpose in their work. When you look back, what do you think about as far as legacy? What legacy do you want to leave on organizations
Yeah.
and the people that you've led?
Yeah, man, it's a great question. And I've got two pieces to it. For me personally, the legacy that I want to leave, and I'd say I've gotten clarity on this in the last 5 years, probably not even 7 years or 9 years that I've been doing this work. It took me a couple to get my feet. I think my legacy, I would love for my legacy to be the realization that God gave us work.
Hmm.
He gave us work to do.
Yes.
Everyone deserves to love their work. They deserve to love the work that God gave them to do.
Yes.
So, my passion, my legacy, hopefully, is not only helping individuals discover that love of their work, but more than that, I want my legacy to be founders and leaders have created places of work that are worthy of loving.
Yes.
And so that would be my legacy. If I can help organizations run some of the plays that we've proven to be successful, I know that the chances that their individual employees will have a shot at loving their work will increase significantly. I said there was two pieces though. As soon as I got clarity on my calling, on my legacy focus, which is helping people love their work because they everybody deserves to love their work. I had a young person that's very dear to me call me on it and said, "Hey, I got a bone to pick with that because I don't love my job right now. And if I'm listening to you and if I'm reading all your silly LinkedIn posts and I don't love my job, then what I'm hearing from your LinkedIn posts is I'm doing it wrong. That
Hmm.
I'm not performing because I don't love my job because you say everybody should love your job and that you're here to help everyone love their job. Well, I don't right now. And so that was a tough one for me to hear because
Yeah.
until that point, I had been using language of everyone deserves to love their job and my calling is to help people love their job. And I have since changed that now to be I help founders and leaders create places of work that are worthy of loving. Because to that young person, I said, look, I'm not saying if you don't love your job, you're doing it wrong. I'm saying if you don't love your job, your leaders don't get it
Uh-huh.
because they've either got you in the wrong seat, they've got the wrong environment for you to be working in. There might be a scenario where you're in the wrong job or in the
Uh-huh.
wrong industry. I tell you what, one of my favorite things to do in here in Northwest Arkansas is have breakfast with people that feel like they're in the wrong job or in the
Uh-huh.
wrong industry. And sometimes they are, and I'll help them navigate, network around the area to find the right job or the right industry. But sometimes um, they're working on an uphill battle in the organization that they love, but they're just not able to do the work they love because either they're being held back, or the roles aren't there, or the leadership certainly isn't there. And so that's a two-part answer to your question of everybody deserves to love their work. And I want my legacy to be that more and more people are able to do work that's worthy of being loved, and acknowledging that if you don't love your job, it's not that you're failing at your job. It's that you're in the wrong circumstances, or there's some things we need to address in your circumstances. And so that has kind of become a different focus of mine, which is get at the core of why people aren't loving their job. And it might be they're in the wrong job. It might be their leaders just don't get it.
Hmm. I always say, and tell me if you, part of what I'm hearing and what I've always thought is when organizations, founders create very defined core values, foster an amazing culture or a specific culture, we'll say,
Hmm.
that's going to attract the right people to your company that buy into those core values, live those core values, or like that culture, and then repel or push away people that don't. And that's okay. Like you don't have to work at our organization and love our core values and culture, but we want to attract the people that would make them happy and would love their jobs here because this is who we are very clearly.
Yeah.
And for those that don't, there are other places that are clear about what they stand for, and you can go work there and you'll be happy there.
Yeah.
And that's just a side benefit of really strong core values and a very defined culture.
Yeah, I will tell you though, there is a watch out there,
Okay.
and this is something that I have learned the hard way. Um, for years and years, I would recruit on what I would call culture fit, and I would go out and I'd have Chick-fil-A breakfast with folks and try to assess whether they're a good culture fit for the organization. And I went to sleep and looked up, and we had a whole organization of people that talked similar, looked similar,
Okay.
acted similar, had similar backgrounds, amazing people, and did amazing work. And man, we were humming, but the diversity of thought and the diversity of working style,
Mm.
we didn't have what we needed from a diversity standpoint. And so I have come to believe that culture fit is the wrong measure, or is the wrong um, goal. Values alignment is the goal.
Mm.
And so the Chick-fil-A breakfast conversations only changed slightly. We didn't talk about the culture anymore. We talked about the values of the
Mm.
organization. And then I assessed whether their capabilities matched the needs for the role, or their competencies matched what we needed in the role. But the values alignment was the thing that became the stick or the bar with which we use to assess the talent. So that'd be the one watch out there about attracting top talent is another controversial thought, but I'm not sure I would necessarily want a team that is all top talent and not a single diverse perspective at the table.
Hmm. Yeah.
I would want a team of people that are coming at it from a whole bunch of different perspectives, but are all aligned with the values that we've decided we're going to operate with as an organization.
Yeah. No, that's very good. Well, maybe kind of on that point, maybe can you discuss your approach to attracting and retaining like high performance leaders within your organization?
Yeah. First of all, I think it's everybody's job in the organization.
Mm.
I think that I think the best magnet of top talent is visible top talent, is top talent that is respected in the area, that is out there, proud to wear the swag when they go to lunch.
Uh-huh.
They're not shy about sharing thoughts on LinkedIn about the work that they're doing. And so I think there is something to be said about intentional branding of your organization and the culture and what you stand for. And that can be grassroots, that can be top performers amongst the folks, talking and interacting with folks. It could be really intentional um, events that you host, or events that you sponsor, or um, places where you get your leaders on the stage on a panel discussion talking about topics that relate to your industry or talking about topics like culture. I think there is an element of it's everybody's job, and it's public. It's important to be out there. Now, there are some companies who are like, I don't have time for that. I don't want to be out there tooting our horns and all that. We just want to do kick butt work that attracts top talent. That's great too. But in my experience, you're not going to trip over top talent. They're going to need to know who you are, and they're going to need to know the kind of work that you do, and they're going to need to know the kind of people that are in the organization.
Yeah. Oh, very
And
good.
so I would say those two things are kind of core elements of what I would consider to be my employment brand strategy. Well, first of all, you have to have the culture that you say you have.
Yes.
Then you need to make it everybody's job, and then you need to be able to talk about it in a compelling way that lands with the top talent, the top diverse talent that you're looking for.
How about what practices do you employ to ensure the ongoing growth and development of your people within the organizations?
Yeah, man, you had to go there, didn't you, Kip?
Yeah.
I will say if there is a blind spot, if there's a gap in my resume as a people and culture leader, it is I have great passion for growth and development of individuals. And I have lackluster results in terms of actual programs that I have implemented in the organizations I've been in. Um, it's hard to do. And when you're focused on attracting talent and making sure they're paid well, and I've just allowed it to become kind of a fourth priority.
Mm,
And I will tell you, I've heard about it. Like both organizations I'm thinking of, people are asking for it. People were asking for it, and we were trying. But I'll give myself a C minus on the culture scorecard in terms of like um, career pathing. We always had pathways for people, but could we explain them? Not always clearly.
yeah.
Um, so a couple of things that have done for that reason. First thing I've done recently is I have adopted a new perspective around objectives, around goals and objectives in an organization. Um, Controversial thought number 5 or 6 from our discussion. I think SMART goals are the wrong goals. I think expecting everyone in your organization to be able to come up with SMART goals um, is naive. And what happens is they don't. And then you don't have a performance management system that's rooted in goals, performance, and performance against objectives. So I flipped it and I said, you know what? We're going to make this as crazy, easy, and simple as I could possibly make it. Everybody in the organization is going to have 4 goal types. You're going to have a deliver goal. What is that one thing in your job at your desk that you have to deliver for the organization to hit their goals? The accountant, the category advisor, the analyst, the CFO, everybody has that one thing. I also encourage people to come up with one sentence role descriptions that get really clear on what it is their job actually is, boiled down to one sentence. But everybody has a deliver goal. Second type of goal everybody has is an accelerate goal. What is one thing that if we could just do faster, if you could implement that project faster, or if you could pull that new product launch ahead 3 months, it would have a material impact on the organization. Everybody has something that they've been putting off or something that is floating around out there that if they could just pull it ahead, it would impact the business, it would impact their peers, it would impact the organization. Third one, everybody has to have an innovate goal. What is one process or one work element that if you could just spend the time to innovate that work process, you could make it faster, you could make it more efficient. It's the age old, I have a task that I do every week that takes me 3 hours a week. It would take me 8 hours to innovate that, and it would drop it down to 30 minutes a week. Well, guess what? That would be a really high ROI activity.
Yes.
So everybody needs to have an innovate goal. On my particular team, I've challenged everyone to have an innovate goal that incorporates AI into their particular job. And
Hmm.
I'm not going to prescribe how. I just want you to find a part of your job that you could make more efficient or better or more sustainable or more repeatable by embracing this crazy thing that we're all enamored by, which is
Uh-huh.
AI. My particular goal, I have a goal. My innovate goal is to fully embrace AI in the talent acquisition process, specifically at the assessment phase, the initial screening phase of our process. I want to use AI so that I can get more qualified candidates through the initial screening step of our process. I'm a talent acquisition department of one.
Okay.
I get 100 people that apply, and I'm lucky if I get 100. I usually get 1,000 if we post that it's a hybrid or a remote role.
Right.
If I could find a way to get the 50 people that are qualified for that job, if I could get a meaningful screening conversation with them, and if I could remove my personal bias, I would get better talent into the funnel, better talent through the funnel.
Hmm.
So I'm using a tool called Right Match AI that is helping me essentially do unlimited numbers of what we used to be called phone screens, but in a way that I can ingest 75 candidates and have them experience what would be a phone screen traditionally, time investment, 10 minutes. They can do it anytime they want. They can do it when they're in a quiet spot. My hiring managers can watch the videos whenever they can, when it works in their schedule. There's no more Outlook Olympics going on trying to
Right.
schedule phone screens. So anyway, got off track. My innovate goal is to leverage AI in the first screening step of our talent acquisition process. The fourth goal everybody has is a grow goal. What is that skill you want to develop? What is that skill you want to learn? What is that experience you want to have? You want to go to that conference. You want to complete that certification. What is the one thing that if you were to grow in that area, it would have a material impact on your ability to do your job? So simplifying the goal process is one of the key things in that area that I'm trying to do in terms of career growth and development of talent is just simplify the objective setting process. We now have a vocabulary. Everybody talks deliver, innovate, accelerate, and grow.
Huh.
And anyway, so that's one thing I'm doing. Second thing I'm doing, and I know we're running out of time, Kip, but the second thing I'm doing is I'm kicking off a people leader lab in the organization once a month. Every person that has a direct report, at least one, we're getting them together for 90 minutes a month, and we're going to go through a combination of content. We're going to go through a combination of storytelling and practice. We're going to go through peer coaching, but we're going to invest in the people that are leading the organization. All the way back to the first minute of our
Huh.
conversation, the single most impactful experience of an organization's culture is that person's immediate manager. I
Yes.
want those immediate managers to be trained well and to be equipped to live out those values and exemplify that culture in a consistent way across the organization. So,
That
People
is,
Leader Lab, I'm excited. We actually kick off next week, and I'm excited for it.
that's so good. Okay, final question.
Okay.
Success. What is your personal definition of success? And you can take that any direction you choose.
Yeah, it has changed over time. I'll tell you
Mhm.
that. I would say my personal definition of success is um, every person I've come in contact with has a deeper sense of connection with their job and with their organization, that they're doing work that's worth it and that they love.
Uh-huh.
Um, that's success for me. Is getting people to experience what took me 20 years to experience, which is being in the right role, doing the right work in the right culture.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, Steve, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much. This,
You bet, man. I
yeah,
loved it. This is so fun.
amazing. Yes. So many, I mean, you kept saying controversial, but just so many amazing nuggets in there and
Oh,
thoughts
they're my hot takes, I guess,
yeah,
because I do
hot
get
takes
pushback on some of them, but
and just so simplifying things. Man, the power of the KISS principle of just keeping it simple. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a very complex guy, so I need to break it down into easy, digestible uh tidbits. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
it's just a lot of fun, man. What better work is there than caring about people and
Yes.
caring about the work that they get to do? I mean, that's I'm
Yes.
living the
What a
dream every
blessing.
day,
It's
man.
incredible.
I know it. I know it.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much. And we will share in the notes, like your socials, contact info, so
Perfect.
people can learn more about you, more about Fulcrum Collective. But thank you very much, Steve. Steve, this is fantastic. Thank you. All
Thanks, Kip. Had a blast. Thank you.
right, me too.